The first one was a question from Sean Thomas on how do you spice up a campaign for players who have seen everything? Oh, it's tough. There are people that have played this game for literal decades that are still sitting at a table to play the game. And what I thought about this was you could change the location, you can change the setting, you can do all of that stuff, but a lot of the through lines of the game remain the same, which is you are a hero going to do hero things. You could spice it up by playing a villain campaign. Could do that. That's probably something I won't do in my tenure as a DM, is unless it's like a lighthearted deal, like doing the whole goblins thing. I think spicing it up by just doing random one shots or getting someone else into the DM chair is probably the easiest way to spice something up, is to change who is telling the story, because everyone has their own lived experiences that inform their storytelling. Like every author tells a story differently based on their lived experience or their research or otherwise. And there's always a story that someone wants to tell, but maybe doesn't have the drive to do it. But I think everyone at our table, deserves the ability to do that, or at least the option. But I think this question very specifically is like, how do you spice up a campaign for players who've seen everything? Is just like, okay, I've thrown every monster at them in the monster manual. The beautiful thing is that there are so many third-party companies out there right now, and not sponsored, but Kobold Press does a fantastic expansion on the Beasts. Tome of Beasts 1, 2, and now I believe 3 just released. So if you're just looking for monsters, like, that is easy enough, far and away the best way to do that. And I use them all the time. I've made great use of Tome of Beasts 2 in various different shows and games and home games and things like that to great effect. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with that. Now, if you don't want to depend on a third-party writing source and you want to do it yourself, I mean, what to do is, well, as many DMs do in their home brewing, you become a game designer. You start messing with mechanics and things like that to change the way that the game works to fit your table better. And I think that's probably the easiest way to spice things up in the Dungeons & Dragons format and setting. And D&D doesn't do everything well. There are various different other tabletop games that do specific things much better than D&D does the general act of tabletop. But it is the most widely accessible and most popular thing to do. So a lot of people just get in on that and then they just play that. As you hack things together, there's probably a tabletop game out there that fits that hack a little bit better. It's hard to find them though. So if you want to spice up a campaign, like really play a different system. That's a good one. Learn a different rule set. Instead of playing traditional Dungeons & Dragons, go play Call of Cthulhu or something. Really, get behind something different. In a traditional D&D sense, new monsters is always a good format there, but it always comes down to like this kind of like high fantasy, adventure setting where you're the good guys and there's, the wizard has the same spells and the barbarian does the same thing and the fighter does the same stuff. I think to spice it up, like have your players play different classes, have them roll their characters differently, change some of the mechanics of the game to alter the game space and keep it new and fresh. Because there's only so much that a new setting will do for you. And as much as new settings are great for that, a lot of them really fall back on, the backbone of D&D, which is just you are a fantasy adventurer hero. And that can kind of start to feel samey. But I think there's a lot of greatness in the similarity, is that everyone has this experience of playing Dungeons & Dragons, and if you talk to someone else who has played Dungeons & Dragons, you have a shared experience regardless of being at the same table because of the similarities between all of them. So every campaign isn't going to be spicy. Every campaign isn't going to be more than go find MacGuffin to save the world. But that's not necessarily a bad thing either. For those of you sitting in chat right now, how would you spice up your campaign for players who've seen everything? I mentioned play a different system, which I think is a great idea. That really switches it up. New settings, but new settings can only go so far. New monsters, but that either relies on the DM creating new monsters or going after third-party content, which is, I think, perfectly viable, and I make use of that all the time. Or starting to hack the game into different things, right? Like you become more of a game designer, and you start changing the way that the game functions to keep it, you know, fresh and new. You would use a new world, one they have a huge part in. Okay, so changing the setting, right? So that is one thing too. Like doing something I wanted to do but didn't really pan out with how Ruin has functioned so far, is that it was supposed to be a somewhat shared world building experience. And it's actually mostly fallen to May in the backbone of the world building portion of things, really hashing out like specific details on stuff, and she's very good at that, rather than the like shared world that I had envisioned creating from that. So it can be difficult when players just want to be players a lot of the time. They don't want to do that world building portion, not just changing an entirely new world of your own Right, I understand that, like a homebrew world. Again, what we've been doing with the Ruin series was somewhat it's supposed to be a shared world building experience. And the thing is, it is, whether or not they know it, everything that they've said and functioned as in those episodes is noted down and is canon to the world now. So that's, you know, so that's like shared world building, which I think is actually really valuable. But you have to have, like, getting your player buy-in on that is really important, I think, because otherwise it still just falls all to you as the DM to make it all work. Alter existing monsters is great for Monster Manual aficionados. They will always be thrown off when the red dragon uses lightning or frost breath. Yes! Ah, I love that, because there are always those players that sit at your table that are very much in the books, and, you know, they've been playing for years and they know everything about the Monster Manual, which is why I love third-party monsters, because they introduce new mechanics and new things a lot of times, and it's very fun to use those. Now, are all of them perfectly balanced? No, but that's okay, because you can balance things on the fly as a DM. We talked about that the last time we did a Q&A, about how to balance encounters on the move. But yes, exactly. What if your red dragon no longer has to only breathe fire? What if your red dragon also breathes lightning? Oh, that's crazy. But it is something to establish, like, in the world as well, that's a thing. Like, a lot of people run the traditional Faerunian universe, but, like, I preface at the top of every one of my professional run games is that this is not like the world that you know. Things will be different. I will change things. Not everything is black and white. There's lots of gray here. Monster Manual is just a guideline. So, like, if you're used to all of these things, like, it's not going to be like that. So I think it's very important that you preface that for your players. Otherwise, you know, some of the very traditionalist members of the TTRPG community can get very up in arms about that. I say they should just suck it up, but, you know, some people can get pretty mad. I do love to create entirely new monsters. Players love to encounter creatures they've never seen. Exactly. Yes, monsters from books and games completely outside D&D or movies, right? You know, bring in Predator. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. I want to bring in Predator almost exactly and just have Predator hunt down the players. I think that'd be a great idea. What I do with my dragons, I just remove 1 or 2 damage dice to breath attacks that they're not affinity to. That's smart too. That's pretty cool. Like, giving them a different option is always nice. And I think, like, along the lines of, like, a red dragon. Let's just go with that, because it's really nice and traditional. It's like, oh, they have a huge fire breath, right? Like, that's what they do. Like, it could be as simple as, like, you change that they also have, like, a smoke breath, right? Like, something to obscure an area. You know, giving some different tools, but still along the same lines of the affinity of that creature. So you could do that too, right? Like, oh, instead of a breath, like, the white dragon can summon essentially Sleet Storm, right? Generally, they don't have that ability to do magic, but you just, you know, color it as their breath weapon. Is like, he creates a storm from his breath, you know, rains sleet on you, like that kind of thing too. So adding, like, different little stuff like that, I don't think is a problem. And again, as the DM, it is easy enough to balance things on the fly. You shouldn't nerf dragons. I'm not talking about nerfing them. I'm talking about actually enhancing them. changing them in ways that like make them unexpected, not your non-traditional chromatics and things like that, right? Like giving them extra things. There's also like so many different types now, like published types that are incredibly underutilized. And I think there's a lot of options that are still there for you to do. So like if you really, I will come back to this one all the time. If you really want to spice up your campaign, Mind Flayer Dragon. It's awesome and terrifying. Do that. Your entire campaign can be built around that. Because its breath weapon is the tadpoles that make like Mind Flayers. It's terrifying. It's amazing. So you really want to spice it up, you do that. It's great. It's awesome. And then your whole entire campaign comes, around that thing. Mind Flayer Dragons, consider that stolen? You can steal it because it's not mine. It is a published thing. It is a thing that exists, and I've brought up on this channel before. That is published in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. It is the big bad of that book, in my opinion. Plenty of different ways to spice things up depending on what depth you want to go in. And I think that's what matters. Like how bored are your players? Does changing a basic goblin to being able to do additional things or to be slightly stronger enough for them to become interested in it? Obviously, dumbing down our whole dragon thing that we were just talking about. Or do you need to rewrite the world that exists around them? One of my favorite things to do with monsters is to add legendary actions. Yes. Ooh, Travis, yes. Legendary actions are incredibly underutilized. Yes. Being able to do stuff throughout the turn order is such a fun way to keep players engaged throughout combat. Yes. Oh my god, it's so great. Even if it's simple things, like he just shoves someone, or just like makes an additional attack, whatever your character does, whatever your creature does, or just moves, right? It has the ability to move from one place to another. It makes everything so dynamic. The next one is much more specific to professional DMing. Two-part question from Polyhedral Combatant on Twitter. What was one thing you felt you needed to know before making the leap to become a pro DM that in hindsight was not needed? What was the one thing you came to find out you should have known but didn't before making the leap to pro DM? There you go. So two good things there. The one thing I felt I needed to know before making the leap that was not needed, I feel like I've utilized every bit of GM knowledge in making the leap. When you're a showrunner and you're doing things in a content format, and I talk about this all the time, pacing. Pacing is super important. You can't let things lag or drag down or anything like that. But when someone is coming to you to pay you to run a game and they want to spend an hour planning something in that session, you let them. You let them do that because they're not going to do it outside of it. No matter how many times you say, hey, yeah, you guys talk about this outside of it. Every time I say that, they all laugh at me and say, Joel, we're not going to do that. And they just want to spend time hanging out with their friends and playing the game as if they were at the table. So that need for pacing is absolutely unnecessary. And the game slows down a lot. And we spend tons of sessions additional from like running different things I've run as shows. I've spent significantly more time running these things because it slows down so much. And that's great. That's awesome. An additional thing that I thought I would need but don't necessarily is that I thought the value of being able to do character voices would be very important. It's not important. It is seen as a nice extra. It's not an important thing to do. Because a lot of people, and in a lot of these games, they come to me because they want to play a more roleplay heavy game. Because at their home tables, they're not getting that or doing that because either their DM doesn't feel comfortable presenting those situations or improving around those situations or something like that. They come to me to provide that side of it. And a lot of them, some of them don't want to. My Monday group, they're great at role play, but they role play as themselves, which isn't a bad thing. But like they're not character role playing most of the time, and that's fine. But like that's how some tables are. So you don't necessarily need that portion of things, but it is table specific for sure. So one thing you came to find out you should have known but didn't. My value as a DM monetarily, yeah. Solidifying what my hourly rate should be vastly underselling myself for the first year and a half or so, I think is probably the biggest thing. You generally will not have, if you do it full time, your social life calendar changes immensely because you're running games generally when regular normal people get off work or when they don't have work on the weekends, which means your work days shift from being general 9 to 5 assumption, right? Obviously, most people work more than that. Back when I was in traditional roles, obviously I did more than that too. 9 to 5 to more of a 5 to midnight is kind of what you're looking at. So it's like doing second shift. And then your weekends are pretty much sacrificed depending on what weekend it is or what your schedule is, because that's when people who are willing to pay you to play games are available. Immediately your social life will suffer. That can be tough. That can be tough because everyone is opposite to you now. All of your friends are, they go do things on the weekends, but you can't because that's when you're working. It also makes me very appreciative of schedules and knowing things ahead of time, because then I can schedule my sessions around knowing when events are. So like no longer are you the person that like can spontaneously go out and do something, because that session has been planned for 4 months. And if you cancel it, you don't get paid. And that is rent money, right? So like you can't. Keep that in mind for those like people that are out there like wanting to do this or looking at like start playing and being like, yeah, I could totally do this. Keep your day job, do it on the side. It's probably my best advice for that, unless you're super duper committed to doing the thing. Another one from Twitter, Andy Sherbo Alarin 612. First question, if you could do it without taking a shot to your ratings, what genres would I reskin D&D into? I would want my homebrews to do better. Not necessarily a genre. I would just want my ideas to perform better than what, algorithms will push them towards. But that's based on, my size as a creator, where the YouTube algorithm will always favor people searching for those higher searched products. There are many homebrew tabletop podcasts and shows and things that have grown up in a time when it was less saturated, or have larger personalities already attached to them, so their existing audience is already large. Unfortunately, we're in that like limbo space where that doesn't exist. Trying to do anything other than published modules tends to take a hit in the YouTube side. Twitch side, it doesn't matter. Twitch side, I run about the same numbers no matter what we're running, which is great. But the overall discoverability on YouTube goes down because it's not a non-published thing. I don't think genre is what I reskin. I think I would just do other tabletop games. I would want to do Cyberpunk, or like play the Alien TTRPG, or Blades in the Dark, or something like that. But those things don't have the same like audience capacity that D&D currently has to make it a viable thing to do, again, because I don't have the existing audience size for that. Critical Role can get away with playing Honey Heist every once in a while because they're Critical Role. Like they have the size, they have the backing of that. They can do whatever and still get sponsorships and stuff like that. But the second that I move away from doing anything that's not published content, that becomes unviable on our side. Here's the thing, I only get paid to run D&D 5e. No one else has come to me about anything else, and I'm perfectly capable of running any tabletop game. I wouldn't reskin D&D into anything else. I would play a different game. Do you know how badly I want to play Warhammer? Oh my god, I want to play Warhammer so bad. I want to play a dark, gritty Warhammer game, or Dark Souls tabletop. Oh my god, I want to play that so bad. But I can't do that because it won't do anything. The last one I got on Hive, new social media service utilizing for maybe once Twitter actually actively dies. Johnny6502 at Johnny65 on Hive. Is there a way to self-run modules without being spoiled? I'd be DMing and playing all party members. Is there an app for that? There is not an app for that. I did some digging on this because I had a response for this, and this goes back to there are other tabletops that do this thing better. You can absolutely play D&D by yourself. That's fine. And there is a book by a man named Tom Scott called DM Yourself that is available on DriveThruRPG, which if you are a DM at home, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a DM Yourself solo roleplay for 5e, D&D, and other OSR adventures, and it tells you how to prepare, how to read, and how to play the adventure in doing so. Now, I'm not going to do that right here and like tell you how to do this. This guy has done this already, and I'm not going to take away that effort from him. There's also a nice video included on that there. And you know what? I'll include the link below if you guys want to go check it out, just because I think it's totally valuable if you want to do that. Now, my caveat to that is go play something like Ironsworn instead, which is actually something I want to do. I've been thinking about doing this for some time. Ironsworn is a solo tabletop game. I want to play Ironsworn. I want to do it, and I might just start doing that. It's a solo TTRPG. We would just play here by ourselves. And the way that the game is designed is specifically for solo play. So if that is something that you're interested in doing, I think there are many other tabletop games that you can do that in. Ironsworn is the one I say because it has a very similar like fantasy setting thing that D&D traditionally does. So it might, resonate with you a little bit better. Other than that, if the issue is you don't want to, or you cannot find a group to play with, and that's why you want to play with like by yourself, I wholeheartedly suggest looking up games on startplaying.games as where I do all of my professional stuff, but there are free seats there as well. Roll20 also has a pretty good group finding channels. I think it's a little bit less secure. I don't know how to say it. Less vetted than something like Start Playing is, but it is an absolute option, and there are plenty of different subreddits to find groups as well. There's also, things like my Discord server, which people have occasionally tried to get games up and running, but again, scheduling is the bane of everyone's existence. I think you need to look at the reasons why you want to play, D&D by yourself. And if it's specifically to do the modules, like you just want to play the modules by yourself, look at DM Yourself. If you don't care about the modules, play Ironsworn if you want to play by yourself. If the reason you want to play by yourself is because you cannot find groups, there are various different ways to find groups. And I know social anxiety is like a whole thing, but sometimes we got to step out of our box there and, find a group to play with. So I think it comes down to like, do you care about playing the modules? Because there are significantly better ways to play tabletop games by yourself than relying on Wizards of the Coast modules. Makes me really want to play Ironsworn though. So if you want to see Ironsworn stuff, let me know down there. That's a point for the comments below YouTube, not for you Twitch chat. Or you can hire someone to DM the game for you and find a group for you, which is my job. I literally have a new Icewind Dale campaign spooling up in the next couple of weeks, and we just started Dungeon of the Mad Mage as well. So those are two things that you can jump in on and join those games fresh off the bat with groups that are ready-made around it. Yeah, that's all the questions that I had from this batch this month. So I appreciate those of you that did ask. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below for the next one. To like and subscribe for the YouTube channel, follow on Twitch, Twitter, Hive now, I suppose, and let me know what you think.